So unless a natural disaster such as an earthquake happens to us, even if it's somewhere else in California, we hardly think about what we do to prepare. Even though it's in the back of our minds, we know an earthquake can happen anytime, we kind of go about our lives, unless, like recently, that Napa earthquake has kind of sparked a lot of interest and reminded us that, oh yeah, we live in California, and things happen, and things get knocked down. So if you have not updated your earthquake plan since about January 20th of 1994, a couple days after our last big quake down here, you might want to consider taking a look at that and updating your supplies and updating your water supplies and things like that, and finding out better ways of preserving both. Here from LifeTanks is Dave Foucar. Welcome to the Hometown Morning Show. And we were talking off the air about what LifeTanks is, because it's one thing to store water like in your garage or somewhere, but what happens after a while?
That's a good question. What happens usually, people who do have water stored, in fact, the reality is most people don't, but those that do have water stored often store it in containers that the water will stagnate, algae grows, bacteria grows. Our system, the LifeTank system, works on flow-through technology, so that water flows through and is continually changing as water is used. So in the event of an emergency or interruption, then the water is available and you can be assured that it's safe to drink.
Potable water in the case of an emergency. But what we're here to talk about today is a few things, especially tips for earthquake safety. So the top 5 earthquake safety tips. Now the first one you say, and we just touched on it a little bit, is water.
That's right. Yeah, in the event of any emergency, and of course what we're most familiar with here is earthquakes, and as you mentioned, we're often not prepared. We talk about them a lot, but it's always tomorrow rather than today that we prepare. But the most important thing for not only earthquakes, but any sort of emergency is to have water available. Most people are unaware that you can't live for more than 3 days without water, but in addition to that, it can take only a few hours to start to suffer from the effects of dehydration. So within a day, you can be very, very impaired physically without water.
And we think back to the Northridge earthquake that really affected us. There were neighborhoods here in Santa Clarita that did not have water for at least 3 days. So those are things to keep about that and think about, that emergency water supply. Right. Second is your first aid kit.
That's right. Of course, one of the fears within an earthquake is being hurt by falling debris, other broken glass, other problems that could cause injury. So you want to ensure that you have a first aid kit. Of course, within that first aid kit, if you're taking medications or other items, you need to prepare for that as well. But certainly being prepared for emergency medical attention is a very high priority.
And then number 3, of course, along with emergency first aid kit and water, is emergency food.
Right, and emergency food is very important, and at least in the short term, having some sort of protein bars, power bars, some sort of short-term emergency supplies is a first priority, and that should be food that is stable and doesn't degrade over time. Unfortunately, I've been guilty in the past of having an emergency kit that has food and clothes that have long expired. That don't fit me or my children anymore. A 10-year-old clothes will not fit someone who's gained 20 pounds in that 10 years. So we want to be sure that that's current, particularly where the first aid kit and emergency food are concerned. If the food is spoiled, you certainly do not want to cause yourself to get sick in the midst of an emergency.
So I should get in there, make sure I swap out my acid wash jeans and my Frankie Goes to Hollywood t-shirts for something a little bit more modern.
That would be a good idea.
Here's one thing too that I want to remind you in emergencies is make sure that you have a manual can opener. The one thing I learned the hard way of the Northridge earthquake is all we had was an electric can opener, and our electricity was off for a few days, so it got a bit interesting to try and find one even in stores that finally opened. So
right.
Seriously. Number 4, we have shut-off valves, and this is incredibly important.
Right. Yeah, one of the things that all experts recommend in the aftermath of an earthquake is to ensure that there's not gas, water, or electrical issues. So ensuring that your utilities are working properly is very important because there's actually more damage caused for the average earthquake by fires and flooding the actual earthquake itself. So it's very important to know where your shutoff valves are and to be able to shut them off, or in fact have an automatic shutoff valve that will close when it senses seismic activity. Which, by the way, we do sell shutoff valves.
And that's good, and that's a requirement, and there are still some older homes that don't have those, so that is a good opportunity. I think I'm renting one right now that doesn't have one, so I
That's
should be
right.
able to
In
talk to
both
my landlord about
cases,
that.
it's required for gas shutoff, but many aren't prepared with water shutoff, so both should be available.
And I will tell you from personal experience, even if you're able to shut your water main off from the outside, things like water heaters and stuff can still break, and the water that's in there in your pipe system can flood your hallway.
That's right.
I have learned that the hard way. Finally, aftershocks.
Right. Well, aftershocks sort of play into some of the other things we've talked about. Of course, you want to be sure to be prepared for aftershocks, so to take shelter, ensure that you're not anywhere that a falling item can hit you, cause damage, be away from windows. So even after the first shock, we can always be prepared for aftershocks, which can occur for a significant period of time, as we've seen with the recent quake in Napa.
Outstanding. Dave Foucar from LifeTanks. Learn more at lifetanks.com. You also have these great tips that we're talking about on our website, hometownstation.com. Thank you very much for stopping by. Really appreciate that, and best of luck to you.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Right back with traffic after this.